Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I was thinking yesterday on the way up in the plane as I was meant to be preparing my presentation, what am I going to speak of? What am I going to talk about today? My job is incredibly diverse. There's not necessarily one thing that I do in any one day that could describe the interaction that I have with the startups and the entrepreneurs, the disruptors, the meetups, the incubators that we deal with each and every day. So I thought what I'd like to do is pull out a story of something that we've been working on for the last couple of years, which then in turn could help shape this conversation, which would help you understand what it is that we're seeing out there in the market, the trends that we're seeing, the changes that we're seeing. And I think it was Scott a couple of presentations back who had pointed out that things are kind of heading towards a state where we're not really sure as to what's happening next. So all I can tell you and what I hope to share with you today is just how incredibly fast things are changing and what it is that we're doing to connect the developers and coders, the average startup, the born on the clouds, and then in turn up to the corporate developers, to the kinds of things that we're seeing out in the market. So here's the brief they gave me. So I'm sitting there on the plane, squashed up a little bit, I'm only little, but it's still a little bit tight, and I'm thinking, what am I going to talk about? The brief being, what is the role and how do we make this extraordinary, and how do we make IBM sound exciting? And this is a company that's 106 years old. And I tell you that when the average age of an American company is 12. So there's a certain level of excitement in IBM. I can see one of my colleagues out there, and all we do each and every day is live and breathe excitement. But there's a certain sense of solidness, and there's a connection to the old world that has to be leveraged. And to that end, what I want to do is tell you a story of how an incubator that I was introduced to, and then of a meetup, quite a significant meetup, helped join the whole startup community to us at IBM and helped to reshape our thinking a couple of years ago. Just going back to a previous role I had, so I'm currently responsible for a tiny little corner of IBM, and that little corner of IBM is our platform as a service effort, and it's a trend that you will recognize. We're there with a couple of other significant vendors, and we have a certain approach. But essentially, it's platform and it's services that you're pulling down and using on a day-to-day basis to help you build out in an agile, in an uber agile, in extreme programming, in paired programming type techniques. So, like all good things in IBM, it started with a plan. And I'm not going to hang around on this one too long, but we came up with this brilliant concept of 5, 4, 3, 2. We stripped it all back. So what I'll show you here today is really just the 2 and the 1. And this goes back 3 years. And what I'd said to the team at the time was, let's just concentrate on this area of the business called global entrepreneur. And let's concentrate on the startups and the devs within that area. And this is a little before we announced this new platform. So it was at a time when we were looking to how we would bridge the older world of, I'm in sales, as I would imagine most of you are too. Your existence depends upon selling something, whether it's selling your concept or it's selling eventually your company or selling a product or selling your idea to another party. We're all in sales. So we pulled all of this down into these 2 different areas, and we then decided to concentrate on something called medtech. Now, since then, we've grown that focus out to fintech, and as the last panel was just in discussion, an area that at the time was quite nascent. A few years ago, Internet of Things was really a couple of slides and was being promoted quite heavily by Cisco. But it wasn't something that it wasn't reality. Whereas now we're on the edge of a significant, the age of hardware, as the guys pulled out there. So I'd said to the team, who are we going to team with? So we pulled together some areas of our business, the software group itself, our professional services arm, and for those of you who don't know, IBM has a consulting services called Global Business Services. We pulled together some of the independents. We knew that we were disconnected from what was happening outside of IBM itself, and we'd made a decision to to build out a new concept called IBM Garage Services. Now, since then, we've grown the Garage Services concept from a single instance out of San Francisco where we coexist with a company called Galvanize. And if you know Jim Dedders, Jim was named Entrepreneur of the Year last year, and we became a co-tenant in that space down in Somar in San Francisco. We've since then bridged it out to level 39 in London, where the UK government, for those, most of you would know, has made a huge investment in fintech outcomes and have quantified the return to the British economy in the many billions of pounds per year. We headed over to an area of IBM that normally is really closed doors to a lot of parts, even to IBM itself, and that's called IBM Research. So IBM Research, for those of you who don't know, we have a significant number. I think it's around about 10% of our overall resource of about 400,000 people are focused on IBM and IBM Research outcomes. And we started to work very closely with a single incubator, akin to Block 71 here as one of the indicative incubators that you have here in Singapore. And we just began to knuckle down and pull apart our business. We spent a lot of time out there in the field, out with the meetups, sitting in on some meetups that I never thought I would have attended before, Salesforce.com, joining in with Google and with Amazon and just taking a good cold hard look at what was happening out there. And these are pictures of the York Butter Factory itself in Melbourne, Victoria. We built out a quite significant relationship with a number of other incubators, from River City Labs in Brisbane through to Tankstream in Sydney and a couple of others, Fish Burners, Inspire 9 in Melbourne, alongside with the York Butter Factory, and the Majoran in Adelaide, and with a Space Cubed over in Perth, and just immersed ourselves in this space. We also hooked up with a pretty dedicated, and now the third largest medtech meetup in the world, a group called Startup Health Tech. And we started to build out this relationship even more. And then in turn bridged into an area called Health Excel, which was a focused area invested in medtech outcomes based out of Ireland, where we originally were investing in startups and entrepreneurs that were focused on medtech outcomes and helping them concentrate and grow their efforts into the European market. We then brought in a clinical partner. So in order to expand this, we realised that if we were going to connect these lower level, the startups themselves through to some sort of significant business outcome, then we needed to look at the user experience. So we started to pull it apart even further, started to think, how do we bridge, how do we build out, how do we use user experience and design processes to help us better understand what these applications and then the end result were eventually going to look like. And at the same time, for those of you who recall, we began our journey with Apple. And that was mind-blowing. I actually had a chance to visit and to sit in the audience when we first announced that. It's since then grown to something quite significant. Specifically, and if you just single out medtech, one area we announced maybe about a month ago in Japan with Apple and Japan Post. And Japan Post, if you don't know, is the 25th largest business in the world. And the outcome and the focus there is to reach 20 million aged care clients, I guess, for want of a better term. People in the Japanese population who are now making that journey from being in good health through to a problem that we all face, which is this growing issue of how do you deal with a bigger and growing number of people that are dealing with, we're obviously living longer, and you've all heard the stats, but how do we deal with that right through to palliative care? I spent a lot of time looking at the execution, pulling it apart, focusing, refocusing. I've spent more time with meetups and I've eaten more pizza. I don't drink, but if I did, I would have drunk a lot of beer over the last couple of years, just trying to figure out what is the connection to the outside world? How is it that we pull these concepts apart? What can we learn? what can we as IBM learn as we're trying to then in turn refocus our efforts to the startup community. The picture there is a group called MAP MedTech, which is Melbourne University's accelerator program. So there what we're looking at is very deep investment in medtech outcomes. And then from there, as I said, once again, we tend to eat well at IBM, so if nothing else, I get to host a lot of pretty keen customer events over dinner and just continue to share those experiences. Now I get to the part where what is it that we're looking to do to help ASEAN startups in their journey and their acceleration. So I think the summary I put together once again as I was sitting there yesterday in these 5 different areas. So as much as I'm not talking to you about technology, and I will share something with you in a moment from a technology and from a services bent, is the aim was to provide visibility to a select number and the best and brightest of the meetups and the startups that we could find. It was to give them a connection to the corporates. So essentially, how do we take these ideas and link them to business outcomes? We wanted partnerships that would help us support the bigger and longer term and more significant pieces of business that we were looking to chase. We were sharing and highlighting these high-level relationships that we'd built out. And we'd focused, I think, back on the slide, a few slides back, what we did was we picked a few relationships that we knew that we would focus on and to live and breathe no matter what happened during the course of the year, the distractions and everything else that you see on a day-to-day basis. And then finally, whilst we were working jointly on proposals, we always maintained that these startups and these entrepreneurs would retain their independence. Now it begs the question, what is it that we do that help the startups in the ASEAN community? The trends that I'm seeing, and I was asked this beforehand, the trends that we are all experiencing is an incredible increase in the rate of change. As much as I don't know what's going to happen next, I do know that I believe things are moving at around about 7 times the pace that they were previously. So the question we then started to face was, how do we bridge ASEAN startups to the world of Silicon Valley and start to share that experience back into this market as we wanted to build out experience here and to not lose the significant, the depth of knowledge and the talent that we see in ASEAN. We wanted to ensure that we had a tool set and a services set that would allow these startups and entrepreneurs to basically bridge these, a lot of what's Me Too. And I said that we were talking about this before in another session where we were looking at the Watson capabilities and the Watson services in one of our products and the APIs that we have. What is it? If you've got a good idea, I guarantee 1,000 other people have a similar idea. So what is it that's going to differentiate you from the pack? And it has to be the services capability and the capacity out of these platforms that allow you to bridge and build out in a more agile sense. We looked at some of the initiatives, the Bluemix initiative, the Digital New York City, which we've now launched into London itself and which we're looking to introduce into the ASEAN market, as well as our Watson and Global Entrepreneur programs. I wanted to add one slide here. This is a point of view on a bunch of services that are available in the platforms that we take to market. So what is it that allow you to take raw data and build out something cognitive and differentiated that's going to help you provide an insight to your customers or for your customers? So what I'm showing here is on your right-hand side, the Bluemix platform itself. So this is what I'm responsible for in Asia Pacific. Our catalogue, our platform as a service, bridging into our NoSQL database, and then in turn the tooling that allows you to do the analytics and to provide the insights that your companies are looking to build out for your customers. So one slide and what it is. I'm sharing with you something I only received this morning. So from our catalogue point of view, from a Bluemix point of view, This is an idea of the services that you'll see and that we'll deliver over the next couple of months between now and the end of the year. The rate of change is incredibly, is just, as I said, it's 7 times faster than I've ever seen it happen before. It's just a brief introduction of what it is that we do, our focus, what we're trying to do to connect through to the developer community. And I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. Thank you.